For a bit of context, our cat likes to go outside every day in the morning. He follows us to the door, takes the elevator down with us, and then goes about his day outside until we bring him back home again in the evening. Now, my cat isn't the most punctual guy, so it's pretty common for him to stay much later in the neighborhood, or he gets bored and doesn't play for more than 2 hours and wants to go back inside. The problem is that we're not home, so he just has to wait. My family and I live in an apartment on the first floor, so my cat's solution is to sit under one of our balconies and meow at the top of his lungs to get our attention. When we're home, it works perfectly fine, but when we're not, it's a lot less effective. So our solution was to gently ask our neighbors that have the key to our apartment to bring him up so he doesn't have to wait outside all day. Those that don't have the key sometimes let him inside the building so he's not literally outside. Our apartment is a bit special because it's big. Take the stairs to the left and open the door that has 2 locks. Take the stairs to the left and open the door that has 2 locks. Use the elevator that goes directly inside our apartment. The cat is used to the second option, but when the neighbors that don't have the key let him inside the building, he goes up the stairs and waits. Since I usually use the elevator from the parking lot, that means I don't see him waiting in the hall, and he meows outside the door to get me to open up for him. All around, we have our habits with my parents and neighbors, and it works fairly well. Now you know how everything goes with my little guy. Anyway, here's what happened a while ago. My parents like the outdoors very much, so I'm usually left alone on the weekends. Generally, it means taking care of the chores and inviting my friends over so we can have the apartment to ourselves, which is pretty nice. This time I was alone. It was late, about 11 p.m.-ish. I was just chilling in the living room before hearing meowing over the sound of the TV. Someone let my cat in the building, and he's waiting outside the door. I took my keys and started opening the first lock. I don't know about other pet owners, but I know my cat's meows by heart. It's kind of a rising meow that's very high-pitched and very cute, and that also has a specific rhythm because I've been hearing it nearly every day for 5 years. So I start, but the noise isn't what it usually is. It's too deep and just off. This isn't my cat outside my door, and he's the only cat around that knows he has to wait by the door and scream to be let inside. By that point, I stopped halfway through opening the door and waited to hear him again and noticed scratching. My cat never scratches that door. At that point, I'm really weirded out by the situation, but the meowing was getting really loud and I didn't want the neighbors to be woken up, so I continued with my key. But suddenly I heard another noise that freaked me out on a whole other level. For the record, I'm not a very cautious person, and in my whole 21 years of living in this apartment, I must have looked in the peephole a total of maybe 5 times. But a small part of my brain told me to do it that night, and thank God it did. So I let go of my keys and put my eye against the door, and I saw it. A man standing there meowing in front of my door. To say that I was terrified is really an understatement, but my heart stopped. I just stood there petrified for what felt like an hour. I don't really know how long it took me to move again, but eventually my body just took over, I guess. Or I did what you'd expect. Ran for my phone, stood in the corner of the living room, and called the police. By the time they came, there was nobody in front of the door. They just took my statement before telling me to be cautious and then left. To this day, I still don't know what that meowing guy wanted. I also don't know how he got inside the building, since you need a key to access it, and also how he knew that I would open the door if he imitated my cat in front of it. At least I will be careful from now on. Well, and in case you're worried, my cat eventually came back since then. This happened a few years ago. To clarify, we live in a pretty good neighborhood. To show you how safe it is, a few days before this happened, my dad took me to my drumming lesson. We were gone for about an hour, and when we came back home, we realized we left the key in the lock outside the whole time. No one took it or came in. This has happened before. Part 3. Now on to the actual story. One night at about 11 p.m., my mom and I were in the sitting room. My dad and my sister were in bed. My mom was asleep on the couch and I was playing PUBG Mobile. At one point, I could hear noises coming from the hallway. Thinking it was the cats, I brushed it off. I started to hear more noise and thought, what the heck are they doing? Then I saw something roll on the floor by the dining table and one of the cats walking up to it. Again, thinking it was the cats. The object, however, was placed on top of a vanity we have in the hallway. They don't go on top of that, but we do have a 9 to 10-month-old curious kitten. I then heard a male voice. I thought it might be one of my teammates in the game talking, and I quickly realized it was not. I then thought my dad had gotten up, which is pretty common for him. So I asked my mom, not realizing she was falling asleep, if my dad had come down and if it was him. She sleepily said yes, so I tried to brush it off again. Suddenly, I see this thing flying at me and landing on the floor in front of me. I thought, that can't be the cats. I got up and walked over to the hallway. I got to the step when I realized that my dad's walking stick and straw hat that was on top of our coat hanger were on the floor. I walked up the step and heard movement in the office. It was dark. The office is right next to... I reached the front door, about 2 meters from the living room. I thought it might be my sister looking for something. Then this guy comes out of the room, goes to the front door, unlocks it, and then walks out. He was wearing a hoodie, and I didn't see his face. I was paralyzed with fear and confusion. My mind immediately went to, do I know him? After he left, I yelled out to my mom that someone had just walked out. She was obviously confused and concerned. We realized he came in from the back door, which was unlocked. He either climbed the gate, which is about 2 meters high, or walked up the neighbor's stairs and then over the wall. The only things he took were the back door keys and a Bluetooth player. We believe he didn't really care about that. We made a barricade that would make noise if he came back, and we sat with knives and a big 2-tooth fork until about 5 a.m. We had another lock, so my dad changed it the next day. I slept with a knife under my bed that night. Looking back, I wish I had done something. I played rugby for 2 years. I know the basics to tackle, but I couldn't move, obviously because of fear. But my brain was also trying to understand what was happening. I probably could have taken him on. He was very thin and looked to be between 17 and 20 at most, judging by his style and body. We think we might know who did it, but they didn't break in. They only took 2 things and walked past all of our valuables. He didn't do anything to us. It almost looked like he was trying to get my attention as well, almost as if it was a bet, and he tried to find a reason to get out. Either that or he's the worst robber I've heard of. I'm just happy my sister wasn't there. It probably would have been a different story if she'd been there with us. A lot of people think they know how they'd react in certain situations. I am living proof that they don't. I thought I'd scream at least, but nothing. We now lock our doors every night. Every time I hear a noise, I get a bit frightened, but I'm okay. If he wanted to hurt me, he would have tried. We got lucky.